Have you ever watched someone steal from you? With a smile so confident. You almost believe they deserve it? That was my brother, Daniel. Golden child. Family favorite. The son who could do no wrong. And then there was me. Lila. The quiet one. The invisible daughter. The afterthought. When our father died, people whispered condolences into my shoulder. As if they expected me to crumble. I didn't. Because I knew something. My brother didn't. Something our father left behind. Not in his will. But in a place none of them had ever bothered to look. And at the inheritance meeting, when Daniel tried to take everything, I finally understood why my father had trusted me. Not the child he raised like a prince. But let me start. At the moment everything cracked. The inheritance meeting, the betrayal wasn't a surprise. The law office smelled like polished wood and old books. Warm light. Leather chairs. Thick carpets. The kind of place that makes rich people feel richer. Daniel walked in first. Perfect hair. Perfect suit. Perfect arrogance. His wife, Lauren, clung to his arm. With a smile dripping with victory. Like she already knew. They were here to collect what was rightfully theirs. I arrived quietly. Black blouse. Minimal makeup. A folder tucked under my arm. Lauren sniffed. Oh. Lila. You came. I smiled. Of course. Dad invited me. Daniel scoffed under his breath. Formality. The lawyer, Mr. Grayson, cleared his throat. Everyone, please, take a seat. I sat. Back straight. Hands in my lap. Daniel sprawled in his chair like the throne belonged to him. Because that's what he believed. He believed Dad's legacy was his by birthright. By entitlement. By being the firstborn son. And the entire room felt tilted in his favor. Grayson opened a thick folder. As per your father's final will and testament. Daniel leaned forward, smirking. Lauren held his hand like they were watching a magic show. I simply waited. The lawyer continued. Your father's estate includes the main house, the lakeside cabin, the vineyard property, the brokerage account, and the company shares. Daniel's smile stretched. Lauren whispered. All ours. I pretended not to hear. Grayson turned the page. And per the will your father updated 9 years ago. The primary assets are to be inherited by. Daniel interrupted. We already know. Just read my name. Grayson blinked. Mr. Carter, we must follow procedure. Just say it, Daniel snapped. Lauren giggled viciously. This is the easiest will reading ever. Grayson sighed. Fine. He read aloud. I leave my estate to my son. Daniel Carter. Daniel shot me a look of triumph. Lauren squeezed his arm. And my daughter. Lila Carter. To be divided equally. Silence. Pure, perfect silence. Daniel's grin shattered. Lauren's jaw dropped. Even the clock on the wall seemed to stop ticking. I sat calmly. Daniel stammered. What do you mean, equally? Grayson repeated patiently. Half to Daniel. Half to Lila. No. Daniel's voice shook with fury. That's wrong. That must be. Dad would never. Lila doesn't even do anything. Lauren jumped in. Exactly. She doesn't work in the business. She doesn't manage the vineyard. She doesn't even live in the house. The lawyer raised a brow. Your father's will is legally binding. Daniel slammed his hand on the desk. There must be a mistake. There isn't, Grayson replied. Your father signed this will intentionally. Daniel's eyes were wild. Why would he do that? Why split what's supposed to be mine? I finally spoke. Maybe because you weren't the only one he loved. Daniel glared at me like I'd stabbed him. Dad never trusted you, he spat. He told me you were too emotional. Too soft. Too easily manipulated. Interesting, I said lightly. Because Dad told me something different. Lauren barked out a laugh. Your dad told you nothing, Lila. If he wanted you to have anything, he would have left you something else. Something meaningful. Not a pity share. Ah. There it was. The real attitude. Not shock. Not confusion. But resentment. They had counted me out long before I walked into the room. Good. Because counting me out was the first mistake in a very long list. Daniel leaned forward. Mr. Grayson, he said sharply. You will not distribute anything until I contest this. I want a full investigation. A handwriting analysis. Grayson closed the folder. Actually, your father anticipated this reaction. Daniel froze. What does that mean? Grayson stood, walked to a side cabinet, and pulled out a sealed envelope with red wax. He left a secondary instruction. To be read only if either child contested the will. Daniel scoffed. Fine. Read it. Grayson broke the seal. The paper inside was single page. Written in my father's unmistakable handwriting. He read it aloud. If Daniel ever tries to take more than his share, inform him that I am well aware of what happened 15 years ago. And that Lila knows the truth. Lauren's face drained. Daniel's lips parted in horror. The room went dead silent. My heart thudded. Because I did know the truth. I had known for years. Dad revealed it to me on a rainy night. He feared he wouldn't survive the surgery. And Daniel never suspected that his perfect image was built on top of a secret that could destroy him. Lauren whispered urgently. Daniel, what is he talking about? He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because the secret wasn't hers. It was his. And mine. And Dad's. Grayson looked at me. Lila, do you wish to clarify? I smiled gently. Not yet. Daniel's breath hitched. Lila, don't. Lauren whipped her head toward him. What is she not supposed to say, Daniel? He didn't speak. He couldn't look at her. He couldn't look at anyone. Finally, Lauren hissed. What did you do? Daniel trembled. I leaned back. I think it's time Dad's truth was heard, I said softly. Don't you? Daniel slammed his fist down. Lila, stop. But I wasn't stopping. I was just beginning. Lauren stared between us, horrified. Someone tell me what's going on. Daniel tried to regain control. He forced a laugh. There is no truth. Dad was sick. Delusional. He didn't know what he was writing. I cut him off quietly. Don't you know, Daniel? Dad always knew. His face paled to ash. Because he remembered exactly what he had done. The thing he prayed nobody would discover. The thing that connected. The vineyard. The missing funds. And the night Dad had almost died. But that wasn't the final twist. Dad had left something else. Something only I had access to. And Daniel didn't know it yet. Grayson opened the last envelope. Your father wrote an additional message. For Lila alone. To be read at her discretion. Daniel swallowed hard. What message? I stood. Calm. Steady. Unafraid. It's time, I told the lawyer. And he handed me the letter. My hands didn't shake. Because I'd waited years to reveal what Dad told me. And the part one hadn't told anyone? Dad wrote the truth in that letter, with evidence to back it. I looked up at Daniel. His eyes were pleading now. Lila, please. Don't do this. But he didn't care for me. He cared about losing everything. And he was about to lose much, much more. I unfolded the letter, took a breath, and said, Dad, don't you know? You should have told Daniel. I already know about. Daniel screamed. Stop. Lila, stop. Don't you dare. And I smiled. This was only the beginning. At the inheritance distribution, my brother claimed it all. But I smiled. Dad, don't you know? Some secrets crack a family. Others destroy one completely. The moment I unfolded Dad's letter, Daniel's eyes told me everything. He knew exactly which truth I was about to unleash. He just never expected I'd have the courage, or the power, to say it out loud. But I wasn't the quiet little sister anymore. Not today. Not here. Not when my father had armed me with the kind of truth that doesn't shake a room. It shatters it. The letter, Dad's confession. I lifted the paper and read the first line aloud. My voice steady, calm, unapologetic. If this letter is being read, it means Daniel has attempted to claim what does not belong solely to him. Daniel flinched. Lauren's mouth fell open. I continued. What Daniel did 15 years ago changed everything. I forgave him. But forgiveness does not erase truth. Daniel slammed his hand on the desk. Lila, stop. Lauren grabbed his arm. Daniel, what did you do? His breath hitched. I kept reading. Lila deserves to know exactly why the vineyard almost collapsed, and why the company accounts were audited. None of it was her fault, but all of it was Daniel's. The room went silent, except for the sound of Daniel's breathing, growing sharp and desperate. Mr. Grayson adjusted his glasses, stunned. I folded the letter halfway and looked directly at Daniel. You stole from Dad, I said quietly. You drained the vineyard account. Gasps filled the room. Lauren jerked her hand away from him. You what? Daniel's voice cracked. It was one time. I was young. Dad said he'd forget it. I cut him off. No. He never forgot. He saved the records. I turned to Grayson. Please show them. The lawyer, still pale, opened another folder Dad had placed in his care. Screenshots, bank statements, wire transfers. He projected the first page onto the office screen. A $147,000 transfer from the vineyard account to an account with Daniel's initials. Lauren's eyes widened in horror. Daniel, is that you? Daniel stuttered. I was 20. Dad gave me a card. He told me I could use it for emergencies. That wasn't an emergency, I said. You bought a BMW, a trip to Greece, and a watch collection. Lauren gasped. You stole from your father? From the business? Daniel's face reddened. No. I meant to put it back. Dad said. It wasn't like that. But Dad's letter told the truth. I resumed reading. He spent irresponsibly. He lied to me. He nearly bankrupted the vineyard and risked the entire family's future. Grayson read the next line aloud. This is why I changed my will. Lauren's jaw dropped. So that's why Lila got half. Because you stole? Daniel shouted. I didn't steal. I made a mistake. A mistake? Lauren snapped. You cost the vineyard 6 years of recovery. You almost ruined your father. Daniel looked like he'd been shot. But the worst part? This wasn't even the whole truth. Not yet. White medium star, the real reason Dad left me half, the second betrayal. Grayson flipped to the next document. Mr. Carter also left a recorded statement. Daniel looked like he wanted to run. Lauren looked like she wanted to kill him. Grayson pressed play. Dad's voice filled the room. Tired, sad, older than I remembered. If you're hearing this, Daniel has let arrogance guide him again. I love my son. But love is not blindness. Daniel covered his face. Dad continued. I gave Daniel chances. Too many. While Lila quietly held the family together. And received none of the credit. I froze. I didn't know he knew that. She never complained. She never asked for anything. She just kept working. Helping. Supporting this family. I swallowed hard. Dad's voice cracked. So I made the decision. To give her what she deserved. Recognition. And protection. The recording ended. The silence was deafening. Lauren stared at Daniel with disgust. You blamed your sister for being Dad's favorite, she said. But you were the one who almost destroyed everything. Daniel's hands shook. He wasn't yelling anymore. He wasn't towering over me. He wasn't smirking. He was small. Smaller than I'd ever seen him. White medium star Daniel breaks and tries to shift blame. Lila, he whispered hoarsely. Why are you doing this? You don't understand. Dad was supposed to fix this quietly. He said he'd protect me. I held his gaze. He did. He protected you by hiding it. But he protected me by preparing for this moment. Daniel shook his head violently. You're lying. Dad wouldn't take your side over mine. He wouldn't. He wouldn't. Lauren cut him off sharply. He did, Daniel. Because you betrayed him. Daniel's face twisted with desperation. It wasn't like that. Dad misunderstood. He turned to me. Lila, you wouldn't have survived without me. A cold, sharp silence fell. Because that was his truth. His belief. His delusion. I answered softly. No, Daniel. You wouldn't have survived without Dad. And you still can't survive without taking from others. He looked like I'd slapped him. White medium star, the inheritance twist. I was more than just a beneficiary. Mr. Grayson cleared his throat. There's something else. Lauren leaned forward. Daniel froze. I raised a brow. What is it? Grayson opened yet another sealed envelope. Your father made an amendment. 3 months before he passed. Daniel paled. No, no. That can't be. Dad promised. He said. Grayson continued. He reassigned control. Of the vineyard. Daniel nearly fainted. What do you mean? Reassigned? Grayson read. I, Robert Carter. Hereby give operational authority. Over the vineyard. To my daughter. Lila Carter. Lauren gasped. You put Lila in charge? Daniel stuttered. No. No. The vineyard is mine. I managed it for years. I stared at him. Managed it? You haven't worked there in a decade. You show up for photos and drink the wine. Like you own it. Lauren whispered to him. Daniel, did you lie to me? About running the business? He didn't answer. Because the truth was obvious. Dad had known. all along. White medium star, the final document, the one Daniel feared most. Grayson hesitated. There is one last item. Daniel whispered. No. Please. Not that. My brows knit. What is it? The lawyer slid the paper across the desk. A full-page letter. Signed. Witnessed. Stamped. Dad's handwriting. Daniel reached for it. Grayson moved it away from him. This is for Lila. I unfolded it. And I felt the air drain from the room. Daniel closed his eyes like he couldn't bear it. Lauren stared at him in shock. Dad had written. Daniel did not act alone. My heart slammed against my ribs. What? The letter continued. The vineyard's financial collapse was not just his doing. Someone else pressured him, manipulated him, threatened him. I stared at Daniel. His eyes shimmered with shame. Lauren whispered. Daniel. Who? He didn't answer. But I already knew. I'd suspected for years. And now Dad had confirmed it. The real culprit wasn't just Daniel. It was someone who'd always been in the shadows. Someone who shaped Daniel's entitlement. Someone who whispered poison into his ear. Someone who taught him that he deserved everything and owed nothing. And when I finally spoke, the room erupted. Because I knew exactly who Dad meant. I whispered. Mom. There are moments in life when the world tilts. Not because something new is revealed, but because something you always suspected is finally spoken out loud. When I whispered, Mom, the room cracked open. Daniel squeezed his eyes shut. Lauren's mouth fell open. Mr. Grayson froze, holding the document midair. Because everyone knew one thing. If Dad had written it, it wasn't a guess. It was the truth. White medium star, the room reacts, the first shockwave. Lauren's voice came out in a whisper. Cold. Wounded. Your mother. Daniel, your mother was involved? Daniel clenched his fists. Lila, don't. His voice trembled with warning, fear, and shame. But I wasn't afraid anymore. You're not protecting her, I said. You're just afraid of what will happen when the truth comes out. He flinched. Lauren moved closer to him. Tell me he's lying. Tell me your sister is making this up. Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. Lauren's eyes widened. Her hands slowly dropped from his arm. Oh my God, she whispered. It is your mother. Daniel's voice cracked. It wasn't what you think. Mom was under pressure. Dad wasn't around. She needed help. She said the vineyard wouldn't notice. I cut him off. She convinced you to drain Dad's business account. Because she wanted a new investment property. And Dad refused to buy it. Daniel swallowed hard. Lauren turned white. She used her son, she whispered, to commit fraud. Daniel buried his face in his hands. I didn't know how to say no, he choked. She always gets what she wants. She said Dad didn't love me unless I proved I could handle responsibility. I stared at him. She manipulated you. And you let her. He looked up at me with broken eyes. You don't understand what she's like. No, I said. I understand perfectly. Because I did. Mom always dismissed me. Always undermined me. Always whispered to Daniel that he was superior. The golden boy. The worthy one. The heir. And he believed her. White medium star Grayson reads Dad's final words about MOM. Grayson took a shaky breath. And resumed reading the letter Dad left. Lila, if you are reading this. Then Daniel is facing the consequences. Of what he did under his mother's influence. Lauren gasped softly. Even she looked sick. Do not blame him entirely. He was a child raised on entitlement. Fed by his mother's greed. Daniel broke into quiet tears. But know this. She pushed him. She coached him. She convinced him I would never find out. Lauren stumbled back a step, horrified. Mr. Grayson read the final lines slowly. This is why I changed the will. Not because I loved Daniel less. But because he already had a parent. Who taught him to take. And Lila had no one. So I decided to give her what she deserved. Her rightful share. And protection from the woman. Who will do anything to keep control. Daniel sobbed harder. Lauren stared at him. But now the look had changed. It wasn't pity. It was revulsion. White medium star Lauren's breaking point, the second shockwave. Lauren turned slowly to Daniel. Your mother manipulated you into stealing from your father. And you let her. Daniel wiped his face. I didn't know. I didn't think. I thought Dad would. Forgive you, she snapped. Clean up after you again. Daniel recoiled. Lauren stepped back, shaking her head. Oh my God, she whispered. No wonder your mother hates Lila. A daughter who didn't break the rules. And a son who nearly ruined the family. Daniel's face contorted. Don't say that. But she wasn't done. You told me the vineyard issue was a business slowdown. You told me it wasn't your fault. You lied to me. Daniel tried to grab her hand. Lauren, please. I can explain. She jerked away. No. You can explain to a lawyer. Daniel froze. WH. What do you mean? She swallowed hard. I'm calling mine. If you could steal from your father, you could steal from me. Daniel collapsed back into his chair. Lauren, N.O. I love you. I did this for us. Mom said. Lauren's stare was cold. Your mother is toxic. And you let her turn you into someone I don't know. Daniel burst into sobs. And for once, I felt nothing. Not pity. Not satisfaction. Just the quiet understanding. That we weren't children anymore. And childhood excuses didn't work in adult rooms. White medium star MOM arrives, and all hell breaks loose. The office door swung open violently. Mom appeared. Face pale. Lipstick smeared. Eyes blazing. Daniel. What have you done? Daniel flinched like a frightened child. Mom. They know. Mom turned toward me. You did this. You turned everyone against him. Against me. I stood. No, Mom. Dad did. She narrowed her eyes. What? Letter. I held it up. You hid the truth. Dad didn't. She lunged toward me. But Lauren stepped in front of her. Back off. Mom sneered. Oh, please. You don't belong in this family. You're temporary. Disposable. Lauren didn't even blink. And you're a criminal. Mom's face drained of color. Excuse me? Oh, sorry, Lauren said sweetly. Alleged criminal. Mom spun toward Daniel. Tell them this is all lies. Daniel's voice cracked. Mom. Dad found the documents. The transfers. Everything. Mom shook her head violently. That was years ago. We fixed it. He promised never to. He didn't promise, I said. He prepared. She looked like she'd been stabbed. Then she pointed at me furiously. You want everything. Just like your father wanted. Half wasn't enough. You want to destroy us. Grayson raised a hand. Mrs. Carter, sit down. She didn't. She grabbed the will off the table. She ripped it in half. Then in half again. Paper fluttered across the office floor. Lauren gasped. Daniel stared in horror. Mr. Grayson jumped up. Mrs. Carter, that is illegal. Mom screamed. I will not let her take what's mine. I spoke quietly. It was never yours. White medium star, the inheritance battle goes nuclear. Security escorted Mom out screaming. Daniel sat in his chair shaking. Lauren stepped away from him silently. Grayson pinched the bridge of his nose. This is a disaster. I stood calmly. No. It's clarity. Daniel looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Lila. I'm sorry. I exhaled. Daniel. You need help. He blinked. She poisoned you, I continued. Just like she tried to poison me. But you listened. You followed. I didn't. He flinched. And for the first time ever, I saw the boy he used to be. The scared child. Who had never been allowed to fail. Or grow. Or think for himself. Lauren wiped her tears. Daniel. I need space. A lot of it. Daniel opened his mouth. She held up a hand. Don't call me tonight. He froze. Or tomorrow. He swallowed. Or next week. His shoulders collapsed. Lauren stepped back. I need to think about whether I can build a life with someone who hides this. Daniel didn't respond. He just nodded slowly, as if each movement hurt. And I realized something. This wasn't revenge. This was truth. Truth unlatching every lock Daniel and Mom had used to keep me small. Some storms come from the sky. Others walk into a courthouse wearing perfume. And a smile sharpened into a weapon. My mother was the second kind. After being dragged out of the lawyer's office screaming, I expected a meltdown. A few threats. Maybe some calls to relatives. Trying to spin the story. But Mom didn't spiral. She strategized. And the move she made next almost took everything down with her. White medium star, the legal ambush, Mom's counterattack. 3 days after the disaster at Grayson's office, I received a certified letter. Bold letters on the front. Notice of emergency petition. I froze. Attorney Grayson arrived at my apartment. Within the hour. His expression. Tight. Angry. And worried. Lila, he said. Your mother just filed for an emergency injunction. What does that mean? I asked. It means she's trying to freeze the inheritance. My breath caught. On what grounds? He handed me the documents. The claim said, Lila Carter poses a threat to the fairness of the estate distribution. Due to emotional instability. And potential coercion. I laughed. A short, bitter sound. She's calling me unstable? Grayson nodded. She wants the court to delay distribution until a psychological evaluation is performed. That's insane. That's the point. Daniel arrived moments later. Face pale, eyes exhausted. Lila, I didn't know she filed that, he said. She didn't tell me anything. I exhaled sharply. Of course she didn't. She's not trying to fix this. She's trying to burn everything down. Grayson tapped one section of the petition. She also claims you manipulated your father into changing his will. I blinked. My father had cancer. He didn't even tell me. How could I manipulate him? That's what we'll argue, Grayson said. But she's playing on the stereotype that the quiet sibling is secretly scheming. I clenched my fists. And she used your mistake, Daniel, I said softly. She's blaming me for your theft. Daniel swallowed hard. I know. And I'm ready to tell the court everything. For the first time. He sounded sincere. But sincerity wouldn't stop Mom. Her petition had one final line. Until resolution, all inheritance assets must be frozen. And that was her real goal. Not justice. Not fairness. Control. But what she didn't know was that Dad had anticipated this too. White medium star the court hearing, MOM performs her greatest lie. The courthouse was packed. Family members. Family friends. Even 2 reporters from a local paper. Mom must have tipped them off to witness her victimhood. She arrived in full performance mode. Pearl earrings. Modest black dress. A tissue in hand. Her lawyer, a sleek, cold-eyed man named Parker, stood beside her like a shield. I could already tell. They came ready to attack. Daniel sat beside me, silent. Lauren sat behind him, arms crossed. Clearly forced to attend. The judge entered. Everyone rose. The hearing began. Mom dabbed her eyes dramatically. Your Honor, she said in a trembling voice. I never wanted this. I only want what's fair for my children. The judge nodded. And you believe the will is unfair? She swallowed. I believe my daughter has been influenced by unhealthy outside forces. My jaw clenched. I believe she is emotionally volatile and is trying to destroy her brother and me. Daniel shot up. What? No. Mom. His lawyer grabbed him and forced him to sit. Parker stepped forward. Mrs. Carter is simply concerned that her daughter is not in a stable state to receive such a large inheritance. We request a temporary freeze. The judge turned to me. Miss Carter, your response? I stood. Calm. Composed. Dad's daughter. Your Honor, I said. My mother's accusations are a projection. She is attempting to invalidate my father's wishes. Because she cannot accept that he held Daniel accountable for what he did. Mom gasped like I'd stabbed her. How dare you? The judge raised a hand. Mrs. Carter. Let her speak. I continued. I have never taken $1 from my father. Daniel has. I never manipulated the vineyard. Daniel did. I never forged a signature. Someone else did. Parker jumped in. And you're implying the mother forged it? I'm not implying anything, I said coolly. I'm telling you what the documents show. Gasps rippled through the room. Mom trembled. Lila. You're destroying our family. No, I said. I'm exposing the truth. The judge looked at Grayson. Mr. Grayson. The will references evidence of Daniel's actions. Do you have it? Grayson opened a folder. Yes, Your Honor. Mom's face paled. No. Those documents were supposed to be buried. Buried. A slip of the tongue. But I caught it. So did the judge. The courtroom froze. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Carter. What do you mean by buried? Mom stuttered. I meant forgotten. But it was too late. The judge had heard it. The room had heard it. Daniel had heard it. Mom looked sick. And then everything changed. White medium star the hidden clause, Daniel's last hope dies. Grayson spoke softly. Your Honor. There is one more document. Mom shook her head violently. No. No, no, no. Robert never filed that. He never filed IT. But he had. Grayson placed a single envelope on the judge's bench. Inside. Addendum 4B. Signed by Dad. Witnessed. Legally binding. The judge read aloud. If Diane Carter interferes with the will, in any legal capacity, or attempts to discredit either child, without cause, she forfeits all claim to spousal inheritance benefits. Mom's scream echoed through the courtroom. What? No. He couldn't. He would never. He promised. She lunged forward. Parker grabbed her arm. Diane, stop. But she wouldn't. He promised the house was mine. He promised the account was mine. He promised. The judge banged the gavel. Mrs. Carter. Sit down immediately. She collapsed into her chair sobbing. I stood motionless. Because there it was. The truth Dad prepared. The weapon he left for me. Not to hurt. But to protect. The judge looked at Daniel. And you, Mr. Carter. Do you still contest the will? Daniel swallowed. He turned to me. For the first time. He didn't look like my enemy. He looked like a brother. Who understood what he'd done. And what his mother had cost him. His voice cracked. No, Your Honor. I don't contest it. Everything. Everything in the will is fair. Mom screamed. Daniel. How could you do this to me? I am your mother. Daniel didn't look at her. Not once. He kept his eyes on me. I'm sorry, Lila. And for the first time in 2 decades, I heard sincerity. White medium star MOM loses everything, and the court decides. The judge sighed. Given the evidence, the inheritance stays exactly as your father designated. Mom sobbed. No. No. Please. I need the house. I need. The judge read the verdict. Mrs. Crawford forfeits all spousal benefits. The estate will be divided 50/50 between Lila and Daniel. The vineyard remains under Lila's operational control. Mom's entire world collapsed in minutes. She tried to run to Daniel. He stepped back. She tried to grab for my arm. Security blocked her. She fell to the floor in tears. But I didn't feel triumph. Just closure. The kind that burns clean. White medium star, the final twist, the key Dad left for me. After the hearing ended, Grayson cleared his throat. Lila. Your father left something else for you. I frowned. Something else? He handed me a metallic object. A key. Old-fashioned. Heavy. What is this? Grayson smiled softly. Your father said. When the inheritance is settled, my daughter will know where to take it. I stared at the key. Cold metal. Warm meaning. Lauren whispered. What does it open? I knew. I always knew. There was a place. Dad never let Daniel enter. A place Mom pretended didn't matter. The old study. The room Dad kept locked. The last 3 years of his life. My fingers tightened around the key. And I whispered. I think Dad just gave me the rest of the truth. The key was heavier than it looked, as if it had been forged with small expectations and large intentions. I turned it over in my palm in the lawyer's parking lot, sunlight cutting through the clouds. It was old, not the polished kind of heirloom you wear for ceremonies, the sort you find in drawers when a house has decided never to forget. Where do you want me to go? I asked Grayson, though I already knew the answer. The study, he said. Your father never let anyone in there but you. He spoke of it as a place of truth. His assistant trailed behind with a box of documents and a look that said the drama had finally reached the delicious part, the reveal. I didn't smile. Not yet. Part of me was ready to see what my father had kept hidden. Part of me braced for the last thing I feared, more reasons to feel small. We drove back to the house that suddenly didn't belong to my mother anymore, that felt less like a fortress and more like a museum of choices. The driveway's pebbles whispered under tires. The old oak that had shaded my childhood front yard threw a long thin shadow across the porch. I hesitated at the study door. Memories of my father reading to me as a child pressed against the back of my eyes, his exaggerated voices, the way he draped his arm over the back of my chair, the warm smell of pipe tobacco that still lingered in the corners. Dad had always been the one who hid truth so carefully it felt like a private religion. The key turned with a decisive click. The study smelled of cedar and paper and the faint trace of my father's aftershave. Shelves lined the walls, not merely with books but with ledgers, hand-bound journals, annotated receipts, yellowing bank statements. A desk sat under the window, heavy and dignified, and on it lay a small wooden box with a leather strap. My hand trembled as I reached for it. Inside the box were documents stacked in careful order, correspondence marked confidential, bank statements, and, on top, an envelope with my name in my father's looping handwriting. I sat down slowly and opened it. The letter inside was brief but deliberate, the kind of short sentences you write when you know someone else will read them later and you want them to understand every syllable. Lila. If you are in this room, it means the rest of it matters. You were never the nobody your mother said you were. There are ledgers, account memos, and voice recordings in the safe beneath the floorboards. They explain everything, the transfers, the forged signatures, and who pressured Daniel. The vineyard's survival was never about wine alone. It was about choices people were willing to make to keep their illusions intact. You were right to trust your instincts. Open the safe. Dad, asterisk asterisk. My fingers moved automatically to the rug on the floor. There was a tiny brass plate near the baseboard I had walked past 1,000 times. Under it, another keyhole. Grayson fetched a small crowbar and we eased the panel. Beneath it rested a metal cash box the size and smell of old money. I slid the combination, numbers Dad had whispered into my ear years ago when he wanted me to know something without telling me openly. The box opened with a metallic sigh like someone relieved of a burden. Inside were hard things, hard evidence, harder decisions. USB drives labeled with dates. Bank printouts with highlighted lines. Receipts from bank transfers that matched the ones Grayson had projected in the office. And then, folded carefully like a confession, a photograph. It was Daniel, younger, smiling at the camera outside a dealership. Next to him, the same watch my father had always frowned at. Behind them, someone else's hand, my mother's, slipped him the keys. The site of a transfer confirmation was printed on the back, an account registered to a company Mom had named in the documents I'd seen earlier. The ledger traced the route of nearly $1 million like a breadcrumb trail. But there was something else, a voice recording file with Dad's label, date stamped 3 weeks before he died. I put the drive into Grayson's laptop and hit play. My father's voice filled the room, tired, brittle, sharper than any letter. Daniel, this is for Lila. I kept it in case she needed protection from what your mother has done. You thought you were alone in your choices. You were not. Someone coached you. Someone told you theft was a test of worth. I watched you try to be someone you weren't. I failed you by not stopping it sooner. The recording went on. It detailed conversations, names of bank transfers, telephone numbers, dates when my mother called Daniel and told him to take what's necessary for the family to maintain appearances. My lungs constricted. The proof was not simply the transfers, it was the pattern, my mother's voice instructing, my brother's laughter in the background, the ledger marking every move. I replayed the segment again, slower. At the end, my father sighed. If my death throws this into chaos, remember, I changed the will because Lila kept the family together when someone else was tearing it apart. Use this not to punish, but to rebuild. My throat tightened. I realized the safe had a second drawer. Inside lay a single envelope addressed to Daniel, with another recording tucked within. I hesitated a long moment, thinking of the boy I once consoled when scraped knees meant the end of the world. But the man in Daniel's chair that day had not been that boy. If he could not face what he had done, he needed to hear the truth from the source. I inserted the drive. Daniel's face, when the recording played in Grayson's office later that afternoon, looked like someone seeing himself in a mirror for the first time. The voice on the recording was my mother's. Soft. Persuasive. Dangerous. You must do this for us. No one will ever know. This is how we secure a future. Robert is weak. He needs proof you can handle responsibility. You want Lisa to see you as a man. Take it. It's our right. There was Daniel's voice after, laughter, then obedience. The recording caught the exact wording of a call he'd denied having, the precise phrase he'd later quoted to Lauren as some excusable impulse. The ledger linked each directive to a transfer. When I played the evidence for Daniel, alone in the study, the house creaking with memories, he didn't deny it. His hands shook. He whispered, "She told me I'd earn my place." I saw a child resurfacing in him, confused, eager to please, desperate for approval. The most dangerous thing my mother had ever done was convince him that theft equaled worth. "Why didn't you stop?" I asked quietly, though it wasn't merely Daniel I addressed. The question wanted my father's younger self as well as my own. "I was scared," he said. "I thought if I quit, she'd leave. I thought I'd be nothing without her." "You already were nothing with her," I said. It hurt to say it. It was true. The documents in my hands were more than proof of crime. They were a map of family dynamics, the currency of fear, the cost of approval, the toll of secrecy. They explained why my father kept secrets, why he protected Daniel's dignity publicly while secretly resenting the man his son had become. They explained why he had given me half the estate and the vineyard's operational control, because he'd seen where this all might end. We presented the new evidence to Attorney Grayson. He took it to the court that afternoon. The judge, after reviewing the newly unearthed recordings and ledgers, ordered immediate seizure of accounts tied to my mother and the companies that had received transfers. The court gave Daniel an option: cooperate, testify about his involvement and my mother's instructions, or face prosecution alongside her. Daniel sat in the corridor, head in his hands. He looked up when I approached. "I don't want her to go to jail," he whispered. "She's my mother. You let her put you in this," I said gently. "You let her use you to protect herself. You can still choose to stop it. You can still tell the truth." He looked at the ground. The man he'd been, the boy who wanted a father's approval, fought with the knowledge of what that approval cost. "If I tell, I lose everything," he said. "Maybe," I answered. "Or maybe you finally get back something you never had, integrity." At the core of this mess, a different inheritance waited. Not the house, not the property, not the numbers on a balance sheet, but the chance to rebuild a family with honesty. Dad had left me not only wealth but the mechanism to force a reckoning. The key had opened a room full of reasons to be furious, but also a path to something cleaner. That night, Daniel knocked on my door and asked to speak. He sat like a child, small and raw, as he confessed every call, every whisper, every time Mom had told him, "This is how we keep the family." He wept. He apologized. He promised to cooperate. By dawn, the bank accounts were frozen. By noon, the trustee called to begin asset recovery. The vineyard's operations, under my stewardship, were placed in interim management to stabilize production and preserve value. The legal machinery moved fast when evidence was clear and a judge decided a family's fraud must be halted. But even as the law did its work, I felt a different shift. Daniel's eyes, once filled only with the hunger to possess, now looked toward an unfamiliar horizon. He had a darkness to reckon with, yes, and consequences to face, but he had also made the first honest choice in a long time. The inheritance had been more than money. It was truth wearing down lies. And I, standing in the study with the box's lid open and the key heavy in my hand, felt closer to the person my father had hoped I would be. Some finales feel like fireworks. Bright, loud, unforgettable. Others feel like a long exhale. After years of holding your breath. This one was both. Because the truth wasn't done unfolding. Justice wasn't done moving. And my family wasn't done breaking. Or rebuilding. Not yet. White medium star the final hearing, MOM makes her last move. The courthouse buzzed louder than before. Reporters lined the hallway. Relatives leaned against walls whispering. Everyone wanted to see how far the Carter family would fall. Mom arrived last. Hair perfect. Dress immaculate. Makeup flawless. But her eyes. Red, furious, unhinged. She marched forward like she owned the courthouse. Daniel approached her cautiously. Mom, please. Stop this. Just tell the truth. She slapped his hand away. The truth, she spat. You want truth? Fine. She pushed through the courtroom doors. And stood before the judge. Before the clerk even finished announcing the case. Your Honor, she shouted. I have new evidence. The judge blinked, annoyed. Mrs. Carter, you are out of order. Sit. But she slammed a folder onto his bench. This will prove my daughter is manipulating the estate. She is unstable. She is unfit. I exchanged a tired look with Grayson. We both knew what was coming. Mom pulled papers from the folder. Handwritten notes. Emails printed on glossy paper. Receipts from years ago. All wildly out of context. She waved them dramatically. My daughter failed college. She had a breakdown. She is financially irresponsible. She never contributed to the vineyard. She rejected therapy. She is a danger to the estate. The courtroom murmured. Daniel stood. Slowly, deliberately. Mom, he said softly. Those are MY papers. She froze mid-sentence. What? Daniel stepped forward, voice trembling. Those emails you printed. Those weren't written by Lila. They were written by me. Mom blinked. Confusion flickered across her face. Stop lying, Daniel. You're helping her. No, he said. I'm finally telling the truth. He reached over and pulled the papers from her hands. These are my old transcripts. My financial statements. My emails to Dad. When I dropped out for a semester. Mom's face drained of color. She whispered. No, that can't be. Daniel turned to the judge. For years, my mother hid my failures from everyone. She blamed Lila for every problem I caused. She said Lila distracted Dad. She said Lila was the one who made him stressed. She said Lila was the reason the vineyard was failing. He swallowed hard. But the truth is, it was me. Mom looked like she might collapse. Daniel continued. I stole from my father. I lied. I cheated. I let my mother convince me that the only way to earn love was to be perfect. And when I wasn't, she told me to blame Lila. The courtroom was dead silent. I didn't blink. I wanted him to finish. And now, his voice cracked. I'm taking responsibility. He turned to the judge. I withdraw every objection. I accept the will exactly as Dad wrote it. Lila gets half. She gets control of the vineyard. And I will testify to everything my mother did. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Mom's knees buckled. She grabbed the bench to steady herself. You would betray your own mother, she whispered. Daniel answered softly. I'm finally choosing what Dad wanted. Not what you demanded. Mom screamed. A raw, animal sound. Painful. Broken. Everyone flinched. White medium star Mom's final downfall, the court decides. When order was restored, the judge delivered his ruling. Mrs. Carter, he said, voice like steel. You have repeatedly attempted to manipulate this court and falsify evidence. Mom choked on air. Her lawyer quietly slid away from her. The judge continued. You are hereby stripped of all spousal inheritance, barred from accessing estate documents, prohibited from entering the vineyard, and recommended for investigation into financial misconduct. Mom collapsed into her chair. Tears streamed down her face. Everything, she whispered. Everything is gone. Her words weren't an apology. They were mourning the loss of power. And the judge wasn't done. As for Ms. Lila Carter, the court affirms her inheritance. Exactly as her father intended. He turned to me. You are the rightful operational head of the vineyard. Daniel glanced over. I nodded. He nodded back. Something fragile but real passed between us. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But the beginning of it. White medium star after court, the siblings talk for the first time as equals. Outside the courthouse. Snow dusted the sidewalk like powdered sugar. Daniel approached me. No anger. No superiority. Just a man stripped of illusions. Lila. His voice shook. I'm sorry. You already said that, I replied gently. He swallowed. I mean it. I don't know how to fix anything. But I want to try. I exhaled. Not deeply. Not dramatically. Just enough to let something old and heavy leave my chest. Our relationship won't heal overnight, I said. But I'm willing to try too. His eyes watered. And Mom? I looked ahead at the falling snow. She needs help, I said. And consequences. He nodded slowly. I can live with that. White medium star the vineyard, Dad's true legacy. 3 weeks later. I stood in the vineyard. Winter vines slept under a blanket of frost. The farmhouse lights glowed warm. Workers greeted me with cautious hope. Grayson walked beside me. Your father was right, he said. This place needs steady hands. I'll try, I whispered. You'll do more than try. He handed me a final envelope. The last part of your father's estate. Inside was a deed transfer. But not for the vineyard. For a plot of land. On the far east side. Where wild lavender grew untamed. Dad had written a note. For the future you will build. That has nothing to do with money. And everything to do with meaning. My eyes shimmered. I folded the deed gently. The vineyard wasn't a burden. It was a beginning. White medium star the last scene, a new chapter begins. The day the vineyard reopened under my leadership. Workers gathered in the tasting courtyard. Daniel stood in the back. Quiet, humbled, helping set up chairs. Lauren joined him. She wasn't wearing her engagement ring. But she was there. Standing beside him. Which meant something. I stepped up to the small platform. Hands trembling only slightly. Thank you all for being here, I began. My father believed in this vineyard. Because he believed in the people behind it. I want to continue that legacy. People clapped softly. I continued. My father trusted me with this. Because he knew it wasn't just wine. It was home. And I promised to treat it. And all of you. Like family. Daniel bowed his head. A single tear slipped down his cheek. Not showy. Not dramatic. Just real. And I knew he would be okay. Not immediately. Not magically. But eventually. Mom did not attend. She had moved out of the main house. Pending legal review. I had no idea where she was living now. A small part of me hoped she'd seek help. But I wasn't her keeper. I never had been. White medium star epilogue, Lila claims her own legacy. Months passed. The vineyard thrived. Daniel took an entry-level management job. Not demanded, but offered. He worked hard, quietly, without complaint. Lauren returned the ring to him on her own terms. They started therapy. Together. And as for me? I stood alone one evening in the lavender field. Dad had given me. Sunset bled gold into the horizon. The air was soft. Warm. I whispered. Dad. I hope I made you proud. A breeze carried through the stalks. And maybe it was just nature. Maybe it was memory. But something warm brushed my cheek. Like a father's hand. I closed my eyes. I was no longer the quiet daughter. No longer the overlooked sibling. No longer the girl who was treated like a shadow. I had my inheritance. But more importantly, I had myself. And no one. Not Mom. Not Daniel. Not the past. Could take that away again.